Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Ferris Makes Demos. This is episode 31, and I plan to continue on the sequencer in our demo tool here. By the way, hi to guys in the chat, even the guys that I said hi to already in the pre-stream because I'm recording now. Skeleton, Yums, Repnop, Evilac, Tropical Trevor, Metavoids, Dark Second, Zokwar, Whistler Tobe. Good to see you again, guys. By the way, before I dive too far into this, hey, Love Like Subtext. I'll also probably mention this later in the stream as well. But I am now a Twitch affiliate, so if you guys want to subscribe, you have the option to do so. No pressure to do that. Just a couple people have asked, so now it's available. And then what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, as part of that, I'm able to offer like custom emoticons and stuff now too, and I would like to do that, but I don't really know what I want to do for that yet. So if you guys have any suggestions, feel free to shout them out. One thing that I might do, for example, is like different demo group logos, because I like doing that stuff. Just kind of stuff like that. Special things for subscribers. Anyway, I think that stuff's kind of fun. I can also do raids now, so if you guys have any channels that you would like me to raid when or like me to send you guys to at the end. Also open to some suggestions about that. Happy almost birthday, Dark Second. But yeah, that was that whole announcement. I had to just look into what it would be like for my tax situation. Turns out it's actually pretty simple, so should have done that a while ago, but whatever. Anyway, so I've been working on this sequencer, and so far all I had last week was some time scrubbing. In fact, I got that working last week. This weekend, I didn't work on it throughout the week, and this weekend I started working on it a bit more. Particularly, I added this play and pause button that don't do anything yet. Still have scrubbing. Now I also have scrolling, and I also added the zoom slider to kind of zoom in and out and still move around within that. And it's nice because it supports like scrubbing off and then it'll keep going and stuff. So I'm fairly happy with this so far. In terms of like the zoom range, I don't know if I'm happy with that yet, but I kind of wanted to just get the code in place and then I'll tweak the constants later once we get some actual data in here. Now I called this Gruntwork because there is still a bit I want to do with this before moving on to the more interesting stuff. Hey, local hoster, that's happy birthday, Dark Second. And that's tomorrow. Anyway, so I've been thinking about what to do next on this. I think I kind of want to do this play pause thing next just to get some of that basic stuff working. Been thinking about doing looping and snapping as well, just to these little ticks. So I think that'll be fairly useful to do now because that's the kind of stuff that I'll have to go through like all the code when I change it later. So I think I kind of just want to get through some of that stuff before I get to too much of the interesting track things. The other reason I want to do that stuff first is I'm kind of thinking about, depending on how I want to arrange the data for the tracks, I might do some tests where I just open up the old sync files from Rocket and try to convert that data into some kind of clip structure. I don't think it'll map that nicely one-to-one, but I think it might be a good idea in order to get some data that we can actually play with that would be useful in order to tweak the editor. Those are the kind of emojis I need. But yeah, overall, I'm fairly happy with this UI so far. I mean, this stuff takes a lot of work just to kind of bang through it. So I kind of wanted to do some of that off stream because it's just so boring. But there's some things I'm happy about with it, like how I draw these ticks. I also found out that I didn't realize Qt did this before, but if you have a widget within a Q scroll area, when you get paint events from the scroll area, you'll actually get like just a paint event for the visible area here. And then as you scroll, you get subsequent paint events for areas that haven't been shown yet. And that actually is really, really useful because in the case where we're zoomed way far in, we get a really wide control, and we have to draw a lot of ticks, which is kind of prohibitively slow. But that just allows us to draw only the kind we care about, or the ones that are actually visible, which is actually really nice. So that's not too bad at all. And yeah, just basic stuff like having this show up while we're zooming is really important. Also, zoom is actually an undoable thing in the editor now, so I can undo all this stuff. I think that's pretty rad. It also works with like these step things here too. It also won't undo if I just click this a bunch and don't change the value. All those little things are stuff that I want to get right as I'm doing this. But that seems to work pretty well. Let me bump up my font size here. Again, like last time, I'm going to have a slightly smaller font size than what I usually do for the emulator streams, but that's going to be fine. I think you asked something similar last week, localhoster. I'm not really sure where the difference comes from. I kind of know what you mean, though, like compared to Ableton, where you kind of just select area on here and kind of work with that stuff. Whereas here, it's more drag in some clips and work with those. But I guess Ableton kind of does both. And I guess that's kind of the workflow that I want to emulate. The reason why I'm doing a more video software-based workflow, a la Premiere or something, is because I ended up working with that a lot for work for a long time. Or not really a long time, for about a year. And I actually quite liked that workflow. And I think it'll work nicely for how I would like to use this in the future. It might, Freezy, but you're not the one using the editor. So right now I'm happy with the choice. No worries, local hoster. No, I'm not gonna. It's not gonna be event based. There will be events in this, but it's gonna be clip based, where I have clips and then curves inside those clips. I do want to have a system of events where you can have some expressions that evaluate to true if like an event has happened in the timeline. But that'll be mostly for like emitting things in particle systems and stuff. I don't think that'll be too difficult. The sound part's not working already. That's probably another thing I'm going to do pretty early here. I still have sound from Rocket, but the playback is really broken right now because of the way I've done the sync here. So, gotta kind of get through all that stuff. Also, I really want to do loop points, but don't think I'm going to do that right now. Because I think I want to do loop points after snapping. Usually what I do with this stuff actually is I make a ticket and I just add like tick boxes. And sometimes I try to keep them in kind of the order in which I want to do them. And I kind of haven't done that with this yet just because I've been sort of thinking through the use cases as I go. But I actually want to kind of work on this now in order to keep me kind of a little more focused on this. I've been working on this throughout the weekend, so I'm less motivated than I would be normally. Yeah, I'm using Firefox Quantum. I have auto updates on for that stuff. Also, it's been working really well. And it has a bunch of Rust in it, so that's nice. I want to put these in one box here. This is going to have a couple parts, actually. Hey, Daniel Colin. Also, I don't think the way that I set this up is going to be that useful here. What demo for you, McGee? Working on some tool stuff. So gotta do that. I'm gonna do audio integration before I do seconds beats toggle. Oops. So a lot of these I'll definitely break down into other stuff. But I'm kind of just trying to lay out a clearer path for me to continue. So you only need one button here, don't I? No, I don't want to have like backwards playing, because then I'll have to do my own audio stuff, and I don't want to do that. I just want to use bass as simply as I can. Would actually be really nice to have FFT visualization. That'll be lower priority, but that'd be a really nice way to integrate this. Thing is, with FFT, I would get the same benefits as doing like audio playback forward and backwards, but I think FFT would be a little bit more useful generally, because it would be visible all the time. And I actually don't want to have audio playing while I'm scrubbing, because one of the kind of primary use cases that I want here too is like yeah, all the satanic messages would be way too obvious. Like I want to be able to, even if I integrate an audio file and have like snapping to the BPM and even see where a lot of the FFT is and stuff, I actually still want to be able to mute it and like listen to other music while working on stuff. That's all going to be important. The other thing with like BPM stuff is that this is only going to affect snapping, I think, and where the ticks are. And that's going to be important because the primary way that I want to be able to use this tool is like if I come up with an idea, or if I'm scouring Vimeo like I did today, found some really good stuff, and just like want to say I want to try that thing, then I should be able to just pull up the tool and do that, like even without all this, and just kind of like make a little moment, and then I want to be able to copy and paste that sync data and have it have the exact same timing when I pull it in, and then I can like adjust the timing to fit another song or whatever later, but then I want to have it exactly as I described when I copy and paste stuff. So that's also why I don't want to make this fully BPM based, like for example Ableton would be. I'm not sure what Realm is, Frizzy. Is that the Qt bindings that someone was working on? Because I'm actually not sure. Because we do it the other way, where there's a C++ layer that uses Qt on top, and then all the rest stuff is contained within a C library. Or a library with a C interface, a static library. But C++ is the driver in that sense. Oh, it's an elements by lib for Rust. Yeah, so I don't know if I'd consider that, to be honest. I'm not familiar with it. I know that I wanted a retained UI for performance reasons, but I don't think you would need it. The nice thing, though, is that an API like Elm would fit Rust really well in terms of like ownership and borrowing, because you would be producing sort of unique UI trees every frame, or every time you update, I guess would be how that would work. That sounds like it might be cool. It would all depend too, though, if it was easier to like integrate GL. All that nasty stuff. Yeah, and I guess the ground shifts a lot under your feet at the moment. The reasons I picked Qt were that it was customizable, so I could make a dark UI like this and it wouldn't be too bad. I had some experience working with Qt before, and I knew it could like embed GL widgets and stuff fairly easily. And I've been really happy with it. It also has like just a ton of control types. Like if I ever need a tree view, which the original version of the tool did need, I can just use that. So if it provides you with similar things, if it gives you what you need, then it's obviously great. Yeah, even .NET has actually a big problem with that as well still. Like, there's WPF, which works really well on Windows, but it's not cross-platform. And WinForms just is total ass on Mono. That's actually why I looked into Qt originally. Hey, tourist. I have a tiny framework that I'm working on called Wise Guy, which is all software rendered, and it's mostly meant for doing like emulator debugger UIs. Not meant to scale, so I wouldn't recommend it, but it is kind of fun to do some of that stuff. Yeah, Qt does have really good docs. Really good examples for stuff. Like when I wanted to do this custom slider here, it was really easy to look up the QML stuff for that. And now all my sliders look like this, which is nice. Because like having a custom look for a tool like this shouldn't be that important, but for me it actually is, in terms of me just wanting to use the tool, which is really important. Yeah, that's also why I picked Qt, because it is retained. It's so many benefits from that, even though it's a lot of added complexity. But Qt also is fairly imperative in terms of the API, which is something it acts really predictably, which is really nice, and it's not that prescriptive to use. I think it also has some like data binding stuff if you use its own collections, but I've never done that. I have my own little architecture in this tool for for getting things to work with undo and redo and passing like change events throughout the UI. And it ends up working really well, even though it's a bit verbose. The problem with this is I find this really distracting because like I love scrubbing through these demos. Evil, the loop enable disable will only be for the markers in the sequencer here. As far as looping like the whole demo, that's part of the replayer, and that's already implemented. Yeah, it can be annoying that Q widgets are single-threaded, but at the same time, it does make them a lot easier to work with. Like when you can just make that assumption, that's it. I mean, there are definitely cases where you'd want to access them on multiple threads, but yeah. I know one thing that would be nice for this tool is to have a separate OpenGL renderer, but that's kind of a separable problem. Like for the rest of it, it's actually nice that the UI is single-threaded, and the C API that I have that talks to the Rust stuff is also meant to be single-threaded. This is kind of part of the policies I set up. I guess the most annoying part is just not having the option. I tried Qt. I tried doing .NET stuff with WinForms. I tried Conrod. I tried. This was early last year. What else did I try? I think that was it. I knew I didn't want to use Qt via Rust bindings because I had done another project that was similar to this where I wrapped the Rust stuff in its own library and then consumed that from Qt and C++. I think that was about all I tried. I also knew I at the time at least I didn't want to do a web UI. I did not try ImGUI. It didn't have what I wanted at the time. In particular, a nice tree view. Oh, I didn't realize that, Daniel Collin. right now, the performance of it isn't that bad, like in terms of compositing. The performance is only bad if the demo's performance is bad, which I kind of also like as like a reminder that I need to make stuff faster. But yeah, might split that out at some point. Eclipse is in the Java editor? That's not something I would want to use. Because it needed to be customizable. It's one of the things. It needed to be customizable. I want it to be retained. Because it has to be silly fast. I also wanted it to be in process. Qt did all that. At the expense of having a C API and some C++ code, which is not that bad. Most of my background is in C and C++ and a bit of .NET, so it's kind of natural to do that. ImGUI probably also would have been a good choice at the time. But I went with Qt, and I'm really happy about it. Anyway. Yeah, but you don't need to code that much in C++. At least doing this kind of editor against Qt's C++ is not that bad. When you use a bunch of like Qt collections and things are pretty consistent in that world. I don't think it's too bad. I mean, all the editor logic I stuffed down into Rust, so then it's pretty nice, but how do I pass GL context between Rust and C++? I actually don't pass any context information. I just assume within the there's a render frame function, and it assumes that a GL context is current. Everything runs in the same process, so as long as I have that caveat, it's not too bad. Qt Core, I didn't really look into that. I can actually show you some of that bootstrapping code. So there's my main window, or let's go to the application even. As you can see where it all starts. Here's my main function. Yeah, Q has a lot of batteries included. Yeah, so it just makes the Q app, loads the style sheet, loads the font that I wanted, sets up some surface stuff so we get the right version of the GL context. We have to do this globally because I used to support OS X, which I just leave that here because I might still at some point. See if we need to load a file and then make the main window and show it, and that's it. The window itself doesn't have too much fancy stuff on it. I think this doesn't even have any custom classes, just has a bunch of like window title and menu stuff. And then here, set up some doc stuff, and I create a GL control. And the GL control is my own thing. It's just an OpenGL widget, but it will give you, it emits when the context is created, and it also builds the editor context, which is a bit kind of odd that it does that, but we have to, like the whole caveat between, so the editor context is like the sort of main object that you have that represents all of the state that's in Rust. And that runs the 3D engine, which has the caveat that whenever any calls are going in and out of that there's a GL context current. So we can't create that until initialize GL is called, which happens when the QOpenGL widget gets its GL context. And it is assumed to be current when this comes in here. So then we emit that here, and so then the main window can wait for that. It'll also do, yeah, like drawing frames and do some mouse stuff. But then, yeah, so that's what this is. When the GL control gets its context, then we get an actual editor context. And at that point, this takes ownership of it in the main window. I think that is where that's owned. No, it's actually owned by the GL widget. But then we can pass it to all the other views. create some objects around it that just represent different sort of abstractions for different things you might want to do with the context. Context has a big API, and this just kind of segregates that between different parts. Sets up all the context on the child editors, and then opens the project if we have the startup file name. So that's like the whole bootstrapping. And then because all of this other stuff, first of all, it's single threaded, and secondly, because all of this comes from the GL control, we can just assume that a GL context is current by the time we call into these functions. And because we set this stuff up in main, we know it has the right version. This I can actually bump up now though, since we don't support OS X anymore. GTK is mature. I don't think it's nice to use, and it's definitely not nearly as customizable as Qt. Qt's way better than GTK, frankly. Except perhaps in licensing, but that's another debate. The main thing with like QString, QSet, QArray, all that stuff is that they provide really consistent interfaces. The other thing is that when passing some data back and forth between this and then the Frizzy says, is this GL then manipulated on the Rust side anyway? Everything that actually uses the context is in Rust. So all the drawing, all of the editor state, all of that happens in Rust. So if we go to the editor context, this is that sort of God object here. Draw frame here, everything happens in Rust. So this will do GL viewport, all that stuff. Run the JIT, which is going to be run every frame. So all that's happening in Rust, and it's just safe because it's in the same process. Also, this is also just I use OpenGL directly because this is for 64K stuff. So that's just some unsafe code, but again, we can make the right assumptions. It's okay. But yeah, I was gonna say when we pass some stuff between the context and like that and the outside world, for example, when we want to set a new file name, which I think is on here, I wrap the C API in a C++ API, and then use that to sort of segregate different parts based on some like interfaces. But for example, when this sets the file name, when you load a new file, it's here like open project. We have a string, and in this case, I have my own string type that you can just make from a QString. And the string type is actually what it does is it's here. It gets the UTF-8 bytes and then does string create through the context. So it passes the UTF-8 bytes into Rust, and then Rust will create sort of an object mirror on the Rust side. And then at that point, the thing that this is maintaining is just sort of a handle to the Rust data. But with RAII, we just pass these around by value, and everything works out nicely. In fact, I think even string clone here, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think that actually clones the string because I think I do RCs on these. So it ends up being really lightweight. But they're basically immutable. So there's some of those things around that bridge that's really not too bad. Yeah, it was really important that it was all the same process because that would be, it just makes it a lot simpler. It's all the same process and it's all single-threaded. I may, again, do multi-threaded rendering, but that'd be something else. But because QString just allows us to get the UTF-8 bytes, and then we have the ability to create strings from UTF-8 bytes in Rust, and that becomes really simple. And then going the other way is also really simple. It's not too bad. I think that's the only somewhat complicated part of that. And that all goes through this C API. Whenever there's pointers to objects, those objects are going to be owned by the Rust process. But their lifetimes are often managed by mirrors in C++. They'll just take this, and then in its destructor, it'll call the free function. So like it's a little bit verbose, but it's like very like run of the mill. Like this is kind of how you would expect an API like this to look. Pretty standard kind of C API for this kind of thing. And one of the advantages actually of this that we're not taking advantage of now, but the fact that this is so separated means that I actually could put a different UI on top of this. It would be a lot of work. I couldn't just do it, but it is actually separated by like a hard boundary. So that's kind of cool. It doesn't make too many assumptions, but it is all single threaded, and it does expect things to like not be reentrant and stuff. So, but that's really not that hard to enforce. At least if you have a single threaded UI framework like Qt. But yeah. So I'm actually not entirely sure how I want the play and pause to work. First of all, I'm going to just unify this into one button just to make this easy at first. That's actually in the transport. Try to split this up into sort of separate components where we can. Makes it a bit easier. Whoops, I need to close this while I'm building it. Yeah, that's weird, Alcama, because I never had that problem, and I don't know why. Performance was always fine on OS X. Yeah, actually, the only reason I dropped Mac support in this tool recently is because we're not using it anymore. But I totally was when I was making this because I was back and forth between Mac and Windows. And the other reason is because by dropping that, we can get a hold of higher GL versions than 4.1, which is going to be important. Just thinking what the slot for this was, but I think I can just hook it up by using the slots here on the class. Or no, I probably have to put it in the UI file, which I don't have here. Where are my slots? Where are my slots at? Hot slots in your area. Actually, it was signals that I was looking for. Yeah, so it's just clicked. Actually, I'll comment, it wasn't that bad. It was since we were using 32-bit on both Windows and OS X, the JIT was actually fine. It just the i686 Darwin versus Win32, the calling conventions or the ABI only really differed in stack alignment, which is as long as I like on call sites, the OS X one expected the stack pointer to be 16 byte aligned on every call instruction, and on Win32 it's 4. So as long as you just always ensure it's 16 byte aligned, then it's not that bad. It works on both. So it actually wasn't too bad at all. Though I did remove all that alignment code when dropping OS X support. So I actually had that before. So it would definitely be different if this were 64-bit, but it's 32. Dark Second, what made you switch? I was using Mac a lot for work, but before that I was always on Windows anyway. And when I originally made the tool, I was actually going back and forth a lot. And then it's just more recently, I think it was after we did Elysian, I built a new PC at home. And then I have been using Windows mostly since then. So it wasn't really that I switched, I would say. I'm not that attached to what OS I'm using. I kind of just try not to think about it and work on the stuff I want to work on. But yeah. So I think what I actually want to do is I'll just have whether or not the sequencer is playing, just have that state live in the editor context. And then we'll get updates for whether or not that changes. And then the editors will assume that time will be changing whether or not or when that's playing. Otherwise, I have to emit context changes every frame while it's playing, which I could also do, but I don't think I want to do that. I don't know if Rust on Windows is a great experience. I think with Rust up, that's really nice, but I really miss some deeper editor integration. Like, I mean, just to throw out a comparison, I do C# in Visual Studio for work, and that provides me with a lot of helpful tools, particularly autocomplete, go to definition, all those kind of things that are really natural. However, with certain projects, that also is really easy to mess up. And in particular, a lot of the projects we have at work are messed up in that sense. So a lot of those things don't work all the time anyway, but I do miss a lot of that stuff in Rust. I guess newer Sublime plugins and also VS Code has a lot of that built in, but yeah. And yeah, .NET's been around for a lot longer, so of course it's nice. That's awesome, RepNop. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad experience by any means. Like, I really like using Rust, and I use Windows, so it's obviously not bothering me, but I do miss some deeper editor integration. But to be fair, I set all this up like a year and a half ago, really, and I haven't really changed my setup since then. I really should actually just explore what's available now, because I think that landscape has gotten a bit better. But I just kind of found a workflow that worked well enough, so kind of didn't look into that further. I think I should I think I should one of these days. Oh, that's cool, RepNop. Hopefully, when RLS has more stable release cycles, then the editor support will just magically appear. I guess that's what they're hoping as well. Man, I tweeted about being happy seeing about, oh man, I'm struggling to talk right now. I tweeted about being happy to see the new Firefox stuff and how that made me feel good about investing a lot of time in Rust. And that tweet is, at least by my standards, kind of blowing up right now. It's a bit funny. Oh yeah, nice Dark Second. I actually haven't tried that either. Because I've used MSys for so long. So again, like I set all this up and then just didn't touch it. I really should explore that stuff. That said, I haven't because I'm happy with this. So, but I might be happier with something else. Oh yeah, this is cool. I forgot we have Are We IDE yet, and there was also Are We Web yet. Yeah, debugging is another thing that I miss, but I guess yeah, VS Code is gonna have that. Let's really try this. I wouldn't mind using VS Code. I think I'm actually going to make a reminder for me to check this stuff out one of these days. By the way, another thing I've been super impressed with recently, and this is just like off the cuff, but like I got Doom on the Switch. I already had Doom and played it extensively on PC right when I built this machine. It was awesome. But I'm actually super impressed with the Switch version. It doesn't have, of course, as high frame rate, and it doesn't look quite as good. It's a bit blurry, but it actually works really well on the screen in handheld mode, and it's actually super fun. The one thing I always missed from VS Code was F# support, actually, but I think it has that now. Because that was another language I used to use a lot. Still have some projects floating around in F#. But at the time I checked that out, F# was basically horrible to use out of anything other than Visual Studio on Windows. But I don't think it's that way anymore. Anyway. I think I was going through here. Change the sequencer time. I think this is how I'm going to do this. Refactor some stuff. This used to be called scene graph mutator, and then there was iScene graph. Now it's model and model mutator. It just makes a lot more sense. Does VS Code have long launch times? Math Damon, thanks for the follow. If that's the same Math Damon I'm thinking of. Love your work in coolers. Earth Nuker, thanks for the follow. So I know VS Code is built on Electron, but I know that they've also done a lot of custom stuff for the editor integration, at least, to make it a lot faster. But I could still see it have heavy startup times for that reason. Multi-thread doesn't mean it's super fast. But I hope in that case it helps a lot. Oh, so many files in this project. I think that's how I want to do this. Well, C#, F#, and C++ all work really well in Visual Studio. Like, if you're on Windows, it's such a natural choice. The only reason I'm not doing that in this case is because I don't want to have a Visual Studio project. I'm just using the Qt project, Piro or whatever it is, in QMake. That works super well. I mean, again, I'm lacking a lot of things like go-to definition stuff, but it's on my own code base that I have pretty good overview of, so it hasn't really hurt me in this case. That was here. Where did I put this? Think yeah, I just return this as the integer value directly, which is fine. Oops. Forgetting how to type. Yeah, but I don't want to use CMake for McGee. I've never had a fun experience using CMake. I've had like a ton of cases where I try to use CMake and it like generates bad make files on OS X, but like a good project on Visual Studio. The other thing I don't like workflow wise is that I want to make sure that when I'm like changing project files that I'm changing the right one. And I tend to have a habit of when I use, if I use CMake and then I generate like a Visual Studio project file, I tend to just use the Visual Studio UI and forget that it was a CMake project. I didn't want to have those kind of issues. So it makes a lot more sense to me to just use the Qt project format. And then I always have to use that. So Maybe not the best reasoning, but that's why I made that decision. I'm pretty happy with it. Oh, does IDEA have Emacs key binding support? That'd be pretty cool. Okay, so this should all build and then start giving me linker errors. Nice. Thinking about replacing a lot of this stuff with the macros, actually. Because a lot of it's just mirrors for these functions anyway. But it's not too bad either. So it's definitely not all the stuff I want to do yet, but this will work for now. I don't really use any JetBrains IDEs, but we use ReSharper at work, and it's so good. Yeah, ReSharper is just like, when you start using it, you'll never go back. I guess that makes sense for DOC. It's stuff like C# doesn't have a very good way to just make value type objects with like value equality and be able to like auto generate that code based on the fields that you have. And ReSharper kind of fills that gap, those kind of gaps in the language. Did I spell this wrong or something? Oh, I didn't do that part of the C API. I think C# is a fine language. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely not my least favorite. And in that vein, TypeScript is actually pretty good. It fills a pretty nice C# hole in terms of web technologies. I definitely prefer using Rust to C# these days. But that's because I have the luxury of being able to choose. Yeah, JavaScript Sharp, exactly. Yeah, I think C# is a really nice prototyping language. F# was definitely that for me as well. Because it had strict evaluation and you could still do imperative code with it. So like if you wanted to do a lot of functional stuff, like it's a really nice language to write compilers in. You get a really light syntax if you want to do functional stuff and not a very heavy syntax if you want to do OOP stuff. And they play pretty nicely together. Hey, Pelicus. right, so what I wanted to do here is actually going to be pretty simple. I think it's pressed. Clicked. This is actually... Don't really care about that. So this should be pretty easy here. All those layers between Rust and C++ all boils down to being able to write like really basic code like this at this level, and have this will actually update all of the editors and everything. So it's not too bad. And we actually want to listen to this event. I think, yeah, we're just reflecting everything right now, which is not bad at all. We're going to do this. Let's do this on set context. Yeah, it should. So we're going to take the play pause button. Where's the label? You can do set text on this. And we're going to want to do so yeah, so this now says player pause, which is really nice. This will also change the playing state, but it won't change anything else. And we also are going to want a couple things to happen. Is it Fibu? Thanks for the follow. Listen to changes it cares about. And this is good enough for this. Ooh, that sounds nice, Alkama. I think what I want to do here too, we'll be a bit cheeky about this, because if the sequencer is playing, how do I want to do this? Because what I was thinking is that I can wait for it to signal that stuff is starting and stopping playing, and then what I want to do is basically redraw as often as we can. So in this case, it's going to be nice and easy because we can just do if model get sequencer is playing. We can just do update like this, and that'll actually update the scrubber, I think, if that changes, of course, which it's not going to right now. But the transport, I also wanted to do this stuff. Might have to use a timer for that, which I don't know if I like having this or doing it this way, actually. I think there's a better way I can do this. I know the feeling, tourist. I get the same feeling when I watch myself code too. I do have a system for when I do braces or not. If it's one statement, then I don't do braces. That's the whole thing. Like a 10-year-old habit. I think the way I want to do this is not going to be the cleanest, but it's going to fit pretty naturally into the rest of the stuff I'm doing. So I have a concept of these context updates, and what that is it's a way for, like, whenever you make changes, you do so through one of these mutator objects, and that's going to both make the change, but it's also going to whenever you make a change through the C API, it returns a context object, or the context update object, and the context updates really just have a little bit of metadata about what kind of change it was. Originally, I had some additional data on. In fact, I might even still have some of that, actually. We could have some additional metadata about that, but I don't think I do anymore. Anyway, I think what I want to do, like, the nice thing about this is that whenever you make a change, then it will just sort of make sure everything is propagated, so all the views that care about different changes can listen to those, and we don't have to do, like, the observer pattern or anything where we have to manage a bunch of object subscriptions across that rest boundary, which would be really bad. So in this case, what I could do is just output a bunch of change sequencer time updates through the tree while it's playing. I think the easiest way to do that, honestly, is something like this. Output it here. Because I think then I can update the time during draw frame. So that would change this a tiny bit. This may not be the cleanest thing in the world, but I think it actually makes the most sense in terms of the rest of the system. So I think I'll do that. Yeah, I think I'll just do that. Woof. That sounds painful, Jack Skater. Okay, I think I'm going to do this. I think we're going to add another signal here. Yeah, we'll still need to Here, this will take care of that. A sequencer should still probably also listen to that event. The only downside to this approach, other than some verbosity, is that you send a lot of these events through the UI tree. But they're very lightweight. And all the different UIs can check these pretty quickly to see if they actually pertain to what the UI cares about. So it's really not terrible. And really, in a UI like this, you don't have that many fundamental things that you can do through the UI. It's all things like creating operators, changing expression values, things that are pretty generic. So it's worked out really well for this project, I think. I think the verbosity is the biggest problem, but I kind of, sometimes I prefer verbosity when the code is so clear over something that does a lot of magic that it's hard to maintain, especially in like a personal project where like the time that I have to work on this is really not guaranteed. Inconsistent, I guess is the word. Makes sense to just have a simpler system that I can get in and do stuff and get out of quickly. So I'm pretty happy with the architecture of this tool generally. But in this case, I'm going to have to work around it a tiny bit, which also is not that bad because it's not like a super magic system. So I don't really have to do that much stuff to make this work. But I think all I do here then is just if context gets I actually don't think I have a UI to an entry point to create these. Maybe there's a nicer way I can do this actually. Like whenever we do draw frame, that can return a context update. And then I just don't propagate null ones. Which I don't think is something I have at the moment. This kind of stuff, like this kind of architecture, is actually really important to think about. Because this is the kind of thing that makes a lot of this stuff scalable and makes things like undo and redo work right off the bat without too much hassle, which are both super important for a project like this. You know what I could do though? Oh no, because the way I wrap this is that it doesn't do nulls for these context update objects. So I could just do a null update and then prune those at the root. I think I'll do that actually. We'll make a null context update. And then we'll change the editor context so that draw frame will return a context update. And that'll either be null or the time changed, depending on if it's playing. And that actually makes this a bit nicer. Because what we can do is, in the GL control, then I can just do this. Always. And then the main window can sit there and prune the ones that are null. Or actually, even the mutator could. But I think I'll have the main window do that. But that's actually pretty nice. Yeah, I think I like that. It's not going to be option context update because this is on the C side. This is going across the C boundary, and then we don't have options. So I'd rather just have a null be a valid value to simplify that boundary. That is what I want to describe, and if it were all Rust, I would describe it that way. Also, null pointer doesn't work because I pass these around by object for the lifetimes, so or by value for the lifetimes instead of by reference. So I think this is going to be the cleanest way to do it overall. fact, I think I did just write that wrong. So that should be by value. It should just be this. Yeah, because then that'll just send that through there. And then I can prune stuff here. That's pretty good. Yeah, I think I like this pattern. So now I just got to go through and massage everything till it works. Bit annoying to have to change all of these, but at least they're trivial. And then we'll go into here. And then so for now, yeah, it's the last thing here. So we'll do actually we'll just do this. Not too bad. And then just copy some code that I did here. Yeah, it's nice and easy. It's gonna be the same, and then we just return this, and so then this becomes mute C void as well for the return type. And that's it, I think. I mean, with any project of this scale, you're going to have a lot of these kind of layers, and you're going to have a lot of things you'll have to change to keep the architecture nice. At least that's how it always ends up in my experience. But I think that's fine. I passed the somewhat large project threshold long ago. Okay, actually it didn't like something in GL control. What did I do here? Oh, I bet this doesn't return the right type. It's probably what it was going to tell me. So that's going to be in here. Because draw frame up here needs to return a context update. I think that should just be by value. And as far as I know, we just wrap it in one of these. And then we should be good to go. Using those consts, at least on the C side, because it's C. On the Rust side, I could probably use an enum. In fact, I think when I started this project, you weren't able to change the backing type of an enum in Rust. I think that was unstable. Now it's not, so maybe that would make more sense. No, I want to send updates every frame because that's what's going to tell all the editors to actually change their visuals. So I do want it to send every frame. The point is to send those messages every frame. I have a Philips something or other. I don't know which model it is. I don't remember. Did I? What the hell? Oh, whoops. Context update. Because it's either I have all of the controls watch for the start and stop, and then have them update on their own time every frame, or I send updates through the UI every frame, and I'd rather send updates through the UI every frame because then it uses the same mechanism that I already have to send updates through the UI, rather than having to introduce a new mechanism to watch for play and stop changes. That's what I'm thinking, at least. Doesn't seem to be working yet. Time for some printf debugging. Yeah, so we're not getting the context updates per frame. I actually just use Capture for doing 4K captures. I mean, could do it from the tool too, but Capture actually is pretty compatible with our intros, which is nicer to not have to make something. So where is this breaking down? Is it here? Okay, they're not getting here. I actually suspect with Capture, it doesn't have to run real time. Capture it intercepts all of the like timing and audio API calls, and so it can make the intro think that like just a normal frame interval is passing. I mean, you do have to let it run like normally, but it'll intercept all the frame data and everything too. It's pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't work for some demos, but the ones I've made, it seems to be pretty compatible with. Probably because I don't do anything that weird. It can also render in like wrong resolutions and stuff, which is nice. I mean, it would be cool to have that in the tool. I just don't think we need it. Some classic Rust build times. Okay, so that's working. Where is this breaking down? Try one more in here. What monitor do I have? It's a Philips. Philips BDM4350. Nice 43 inch. Oh, what? That might have been it, that I made a typo. All right, now they're being propagated through the UI at least. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Something like that, and then what? Yeah, I have my it's actually nmake. So qmake I use whenever I actually change like the Qt projects, and then nmake is what I use to build after that. And nmake will build the Rust project. So what's interesting is that this is changing. So it seems like it thinks the selection changed. Something went strange here. I would like to say my architecture makes me immune to these kind of bugs, but as with anything, it's not perfect. Though usually when I iron this stuff out, this thing just never crashes at least. This is a bit odd though. The way I do that, by the way, is really simple. It's just here, I just add another build thing for Rust, and I make it just force build. And so its target is this particular domain model.a library that it's building, and then here's the command, and then I just make it always run that. And since it's just running cargo, that will actually check if it needs to actually build anything or not. So it doesn't check the dependencies properly. It always runs cargo on it, but that's like nothing if nothing actually changed, because cargo will take care of it from there. I didn't do something stupid like make sure these match. Just in case, though, I might actually clean here, because I did actually see some similar Like this actually seems like stale build artifacts to me. So I think I will do a clean here. Rebuild the C++ stuff. Because the fact that that other editor was responding to these events seems really sketchy. Sorry, Nautical Nate. I have links disabled. That's in my FAQ. Just to be sure. That's so weird. So it looks like we're getting the right update types. It's rare that I do this, but I'm actually going to do a full clean on this. Just to be sure. Something strange here. I hope it's not the fact that I'm using a slot for this and passing this object by value. Because there's nothing really out of the ordinary that I'm doing here. Just acting a bit strangely. I mean, this should be able to handle that. Like if you would send a Q string through one of these, it would be the same case. So I'd be surprised if they had issues with that. Proper build times. And I gotta copy a couple things. was cute. 5.7. I think it was bin. I think there's one more. Okay, this is still acting strange. This is rare that these bugs happen. But no one is immune. So let's actually look at the op inspector. It should handle this fine. I wonder if that's just disappearing because it's getting so many messages. But that would be like the same as me doing this. So I'm a bit surprised about that. Also, the fact this isn't updating is a bit concerning. Because, for example, main window should be passing all of this down to the sequencer and the transport. Now the sequencer, for example, let's debug what this should be doing. So this is going to handle one of these. Oh, yeah, of course, this is actually this should make it fire too. So this should be calling reflect. We should do this here. In fact, we can even do, I typed that wrong, but let's even do this. Oh yeah, of course the time isn't supposed to change because I never added that logic. So this is actually reflecting as it should be. This is still a bit odd. And I think I actually might know why that is. I think maybe this is actually working correctly and I just didn't think it was. If we go into the op inspector, basically if it's any one other of these, it will try to repopulate. Let's actually do this too. Just ignore those. Downside about this architecture is I kind of have to be explicit with which ones I either choose to accept or ignore. The upside is that I can just do that. Okay, so this might actually be okay. So what I'm going to do is actually make this change every frame here, editor context. So right now this uses Rocket Client with callbacks that reference like the audio player and stuff, right? So I need it to instantiate the Rocket Client still. And the reason I need it to do that is... Or actually, this is the test callbacks. I could probably just do no callbacks here. But the reason I need to instantiate Rocket Client is so we can actually get all the track data and everything, which is still stored in Rocket for now until I can get that out. What I might do here, though... Yeah. Let's just do this. Have this not interact with the player. Just even get rid of that. Just not do anything. And then when we make the test thing, we can just get rid of this. A lot of this is being just kind of hacked until I can get rid of Rocket proper, but that's fine because this will be easy to clean up later. So that's the sequencer time. This is why I get it from audio player time here. The music is generated on the fly in the replayer. In the tool, we use a WAV file so that we can seek. Makes it a lot easier to handle. So I think we'll do something like this. Yeah, we don't need that anymore. Yeah, screw it. Because we do player set time, which I believe is in seconds in this case. And then player start and stop. So what we can do here is when we do this. This won't properly handle transitions, but it's going to be fine. What did I have? Start and stop. And then here, yeah, so this will be that'll be correct. And then we do if self dot is playing it's gonna just kind of hacking this together for now, but it's gonna be fine to work with this, I think. Wow, it's 10 o'clock already. When I get this working, I'm gonna head out. Nice, there it's working. That's pretty cool. We should still be able to edit other stuff in the meantime as well. Of course, setting the time doesn't do anything right now. Yeah, I want the sequencer time to match the audio time when we have audio. I do want to keep that separate because there will be a case I want to handle where audio isn't loaded. And in that case, I want it to still be able to work on its own, which is why I at least have the separate variable there. The logic there isn't complete. Because I also want this to be able to scrub. In fact, I'm going to fix that really quick here. So also I'm going to do, I think it's this prefix to get rid of that warning for now. In the sequencer here, where's my scrubbing logic? It's up here. Because what I want it to do is when it transitions from idle to scrubbing, then I want it to first of all cache the playing state, and then I want it to pause so that it can then seek around, and then I want it to play again when we release it if it were playing before. So in the sequencer here, do play after scrub. Then on press, we can do this. It's playing. This is why I made it include the value rather than just toggle. And then when we release, just like that. So the logic underneath will have to be cleaned up, but I think the logic here at the editor level is still correct. And that's really what I care more about at this point, because I know I'll have to change the lower level stuff anyway when I finish ripping out Rocket. So as long as I don't have to change this stuff very much as well, then at least it'll be relatively painless. The other reason I don't, why I want to keep this separate from the audio play time is that when I do looping, I want to be able to handle that nicely too. Oh, this works perfectly. Sweet. I also think this is going to have issues at the very end. If I scrub like past the music, then I think it just, when it tries to scrub there, it just won't take it. Maybe that's fine, but at least it's stable. Cool, so the tool is still bulletproof. or something. Zooming should also work with this. It totally does. It looks really dumb because you guys probably can't see the scrubber. But what it's doing is it's keeping up with the scrubber position as it's playing, and we're just zoomed in really far. So this is actually great. Cool. So yeah, so there's still more of this kind of grunt work that needs to be done on the sequencer before I get into the interesting stuff, but this is definitely progress, and I'm glad I figured out how this stuff will work earlier on rather than later. Thanks, Repent. Mostly concerned with stability and does this feel like it's not ass? So I still want the spacebar hotkey for play stop and a bunch of other things. But if we look at my sequencer issue, I'll add a note for that. And then I'll tick this and this. Cool. I'll commit this and then I think I'll head out. Oh, totally, Alkama. That's exactly how I'm going to do that. That's how copy and paste works currently as well. Stress test. Everything works great. Cool. All right. Well, thanks guys for hanging out. I'm going to go leave. And I'll see you next time. By the way, I am a Twitch affiliate now, so I do have subscriptions. No pressure. I'm just letting you know because some people have asked for it. So just so you know. And then if you guys have any suggestions on what kind of like emoticons and stuff that I could add to the channel, let me know. I'm open to any of that stuff. Contact me here or whisper at me or hit me up on Twitter or whatever. Anyway, thanks again, guys, for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.